Talking feels productive. Posting feels productive. Declaring your goals feels powerful. But it's a lie. Talk is a substitute for action. The moment you announce your plans, your brain rewards you. Dopamine fires. You feel accomplished. You feel validated. But you haven't done anything yet. You have a choice. You can chase the feeling of progress. Or you can earn the result of progress. That's the key. When you tell the world you're starting a business, losing weight, writing a book, building discipline, you receive applause before effort. And applause is dangerous when it's premature. Talk is a substitute for action. Your brain doesn't know the difference between announcing and achieving. It gives you the emotional reward up front. And once you feel rewarded, urgency fades. That's why most people stay stuck. They confuse intention with execution. They confuse motivation with discipline. They confuse visibility with results. It's not about intention. It's about discipline. It's not about excitement. It's about consistency. Look at the gym example. Two people decide to transform their bodies. The first posts immediately. Day 1. New journey. New me. They announce the grind. They share every workout. The second person says nothing. No post. No announcement. No performance. 12 months later, the difference is obvious. One built a brand around effort. The other built results. Silent work compounds. Read that again. Silent work compounds. When you work in silence, there is no external validation. There is no applause. There is no accountability from strangers. There is only you. And that's where mental toughness is built. You don't need their permission to improve. You don't need their approval to evolve. You don't need their attention to execute. You have a choice. Announce and feel good now. Or build and feel proud later. Build first. Reveal later. This is not about secrecy. It's about strategy. When you move in silence, you remove pressure. You remove comparison. You remove distraction. You focus on process. And process creates results. Here's the instruction. For the next 90 days, announce nothing. No new goals online. No public declarations. No dramatic commitments. Track results, not opinions. Measure output. Measure consistency. Measure execution. Not likes. Not comments. Not reactions. Talk is a substitute for action. Every time you feel the urge to announce, ask yourself, have I earned the right to speak about this yet? If the answer is no, stay silent. That's discipline. It's not about confidence. It's about control. It's not about hype. It's about habits. You have a choice. You can perform productivity, or you can practice it. One builds ego. The other builds identity. When you stop announcing, something powerful happens. Your focus sharpens. Your discipline strengthens. Your standards rise. Because now, there is no audience. And when there is no audience, there is only truth. Are you working? Or are you pretending? Build first. Reveal later. Make that your rule. The strongest people in the room rarely talk about what they're building. They let outcomes speak. They let results introduce them. Silent work compounds. Day by day, habit by habit, rep by representative. And when the results finally show, they don't need explanation. Because proof replaces performance. You don't need their permission to grow quietly. You don't need their validation to stay disciplined. You don't need to be seen to be strong. You have a choice. Stop announcing. Start building. Protect the process. Because mental toughness is not built in noise. It is built in repetition without recognition. You've learned the first rule. Talk is a substitute for action. Now it's time to strengthen the muscle that keeps you moving when no one is watching. Mental toughness is not built when things are easy. It is built when things are uncomfortable. Cold mornings, long hours, rejection, setbacks, silence. This is your training ground. And here is the rule. Endure quietly. Most people complain. They narrate their struggle. They broadcast their discomfort. But complaining weakens resilience. Every time you complain, you reinforce weakness. You train your mind to focus on pain instead of purpose. You amplify the discomfort instead of mastering it. You have a choice. You can magnify the hardship. Or you can absorb it and grow. That's the key. Discomfort is not the enemy. It is the instructor. The early alarm clock. The exhausting shift. The lonely grind. The criticism you didn't expect. These are not punishments. They are training sessions. Pressure builds capacity. Say it again. Pressure builds capacity. When you lift weights, resistance builds muscle. When you endure stress without collapsing, resistance builds character. It's not about pain. It's about discipline. It's not about comfort. It's about capacity. The tough get stronger internally. Externally, it may look the same. No applause. No visible transformation overnight. But internally, something is forming. Tolerance. Control. Composure. Endure quietly. Look at rejection. Most people crumble. They question themselves. They vent to everyone who will listen. But the mentally tough, they process. They adjust. They move forward. They don't dramatize the setback. They don't perform their pain. They suffer in silence. Grow in strength. That is not emotional suppression. It is emotional discipline. There is a difference. Suppression avoids. Discipline absorbs and redirects. You have a choice. When discomfort hits, what do you do? Do you reach for distraction? Do you seek sympathy? Do you complain for relief? Or do you pause, breathe, execute anyway? That's the practice. Cold morning. Get up. No announcement. No internal debate. Long workday. Finish it. Without telling the world how exhausted you are. Setback. Adjust the plan. Don't adjust your standards. Endure quietly. The private battle is what builds public strength. No one sees the moment you almost quit but didn't. No one sees the discipline you apply when it would be easier to stop. That's where mental toughness is forged. You don't need their permission to push through. You don't need applause to stay consistent. You don't need sympathy to continue. Pressure builds capacity. Each time you choose execution over emotion, your capacity expands. Your tolerance for stress increases. Your reaction time slows. Your focus sharpens. And slowly, discomfort stops feeling like a threat. It becomes normal. That's power. You have a choice. You can treat discomfort as a signal to stop. Or as a signal to grow. Most people stop. That's why most people stay average. It's not about talent. It's about discipline. It's not about motivation. It's about endurance. Suffer in silence. Grow in strength. Let that phrase anchor you. The next time something feels hard, don't announce it. Don't dramatize it. Don't negotiate with it. Face it. Breathe through it. Move through it. Execute anyway. Because every time you endure quietly, you strengthen the muscle of self-control. And self-control compounds. Day by day. Rep by representative. Decision by decision. Mental toughness is built in private. In the discomfort no one sees. In the pressure no one applauds. In the endurance no one celebrates. You mastered silence in action. Now you are mastering silence in discomfort. But there's another trap that weakens resilience if you don't control it. The world does not reward effort. It rewards outcomes. That may sound harsh. Good. It's supposed to. You can struggle in silence. You can work long hours. You can sacrifice comfort. But, if there are no results, there is no leverage. Results speak. Say it again. Results speak. Emotional expression does not equal progress. Complaining about how hard it is does not increase your value. Broadcasting your exhaustion does not make you exceptional. It's not about effort. It's about execution. It's not about intention. It's about output. You have a choice. You can measure your day by how busy you felt. Or you can measure your day by what you produced. That's the key. Look at the workplace. 2 employees work equally hard. One talks about it constantly. Mentions the stress. Explains the workload. Highlights how overwhelmed they are. The other says less. Delivers on time. Solves problems. Improves systems quietly. Who gets promoted? The consistent performer. Not the loud complainer. Consistency builds authority. Authority is not claimed. It is demonstrated. Every completed task builds trust. Every solved problem builds reputation. Every calm, reliable performance builds influence. Results speak, and results compound. This is where most people fail. They become emotionally attached to effort. They believe struggle deserves recognition. But the world doesn't pay for struggle. It pays for solutions. It's not about how hard you tried. It's about what you finished. You don't need their permission to focus on output. You don't need validation to stay consistent. You don't need sympathy to keep producing. You have a choice. Replace emotional reaction with measurable action. Instead of saying, "This is hard," ask, "What is the next deliverable?" Instead of venting frustration, ask, "What can I complete right now?" Instead of seeking acknowledgement, track your metrics. Output per day, tasks completed, skills improved, systems refined. Produce, don't perform. Performance is emotional theater. Production is measurable discipline. There is a difference. Performance seeks applause. Production builds leverage. Consistency builds authority. Authority leads to opportunity. Opportunity leads to freedom. That's the sequence. And it begins with daily output. You cannot control recognition. You cannot control how fast rewards arrive. But you can control consistency. That's the key. You have a choice. React to pressure emotionally, or respond by increasing your output. Emotional people explain. Disciplined people execute. It's not about stress. It's about standards. It's not about pressure. It's about process. Results speak. Let that guide you. If something isn't working, adjust the strategy. If progress is slow, increase precision. If recognition is absent, increase consistency. But do not increase noise. The world is full of noise. What it lacks is reliable execution. Be the exception. Every day, ask one question. What did I produce today? Not what you thought about. Not what you planned. Not what you almost did. What you finished. That is the scoreboard. Produce, don't perform. When you adopt this mindset, emotions lose their grip. Validation becomes irrelevant. Progress becomes measurable. And measurable progress builds confidence. Real confidence. The quiet kind. You mastered silence in goals. You endured discomfort without complaint. Now you understand the truth. Results are the language of respect. But producing consistently requires another layer of discipline. Because emotional reactions can still sabotage your authority. The person who reacts first loses. They lose leverage. They lose clarity. They lose control of the room. The calm person wins. Calm is control. Say it again. Calm is control. When you react emotionally, you reveal your position. You show your triggers. You expose your insecurities. And once exposed, you can be manipulated. You have a choice. React instantly and surrender leverage. Or pause and command the moment. That's the key. Think about negotiations. One person pushes aggressively, raises their voice, applies pressure. The other person listens, maintains eye contact, says very little. Who feels more powerful? The calm one. Because silence shifts power. When you don't rush to fill the space, the other person does. They talk more. They reveal more. They weaken their position. Silence shifts power. In arguments, it's the same. Emotion escalates emotion. Reaction feeds reaction. But calm interrupts chaos. When someone attacks verbally and you respond slowly, evenly, strategically, the energy changes. The room recalibrates. You own the frame. Calm is control. Leadership pressure reveals this clearly. When a crisis hits, everyone looks at the leader. If the leader panics, the team panics. If the leader reacts emotionally, instability spreads. But when the leader breathes, pauses, and speaks deliberately, confidence stabilizes the room. That is silent power. It's not about personality. It's about discipline. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about controlling expression. You don't need their permission to stay composed. You don't need validation to remain calm. You don't need approval to delay your response. You have a choice. Pause before speaking. That pause is power. Lower your voice. Volume signals emotion. Calm tone signals authority. Delay your response. Delay creates dominance. When you delay, you think. When you think, you choose. When you choose, you lead. Delay creates dominance. Most people are predictable. Trigger them, and they react. Challenge them, and they defend. Pressure them, and they collapse. Predictable people are controllable people. But when you master emotional control, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability creates respect. Silence shifts power. In meetings, say less than necessary. In conflict, respond slower than expected. Under pressure, breathe before speaking. These are small actions, but they compound. Each time you refuse to react, you strengthen control. Each time you delay, you expand authority. Each time you lower your voice, you increase influence. Calm is control. Control builds reputation. Reputation builds power. That's the sequence. It's not about dominance through force. It's dominance through discipline. You have a choice. Escalate the situation, or stabilize it. Prove a point, or preserve leverage. Win the argument, or win the outcome. That's the key. Silence forces others to reveal themselves. When you don't interrupt, they keep talking. When you don't defend, they overextend. When you don't react, they question themselves. And in that moment, you gain advantage without aggression. Delay creates dominance. Practice it daily. When a message triggers you, wait before replying. When someone criticizes you, breathe before answering. When tension rises, slow your speech. These are not weaknesses. They are weapons. Calm is control. Silence shifts power. Delay creates dominance. Let those phrases anchor you. Because emotional control is not optional if you want authority. It is required. You mastered silence in goals. You endured discomfort without complaint. You focused on results over struggle. Now you understand how to control the room. But to maintain this level of power, you must eliminate one final weakness. Most people are afraid to be alone. Not physically alone, mentally alone. Alone without noise, without validation, without distraction. And that fear keeps them average. Because growth requires separation, isolation sharpens you. Say it again. Isolation sharpens you. When you remove the noise, you hear yourself. When you remove the crowd, you see yourself. When you remove constant input, you discover your real strength. You have a choice. Stay accessible to everyone, or become accountable to yourself. That's the key. The world is loud. Notifications, opinions, messages, endless comparison. If you don't step away deliberately, you will be shaped by accident. It's not about loneliness. It's about discipline. Isolation sharpens you. Look at high performers. Entrepreneurs disappear for months building products no one sees. Athletes train before sunrise when no one is clapping. Writers lock themselves in rooms refining words nobody will read for years. Private discipline creates public power. The world only sees the outcome. They don't see the isolation. They don't see the repetition. They don't see the boring hours. They don't see the solitude. But that's where identity is forged. Private discipline creates public power. If you are constantly available, you are constantly deluded. Every conversation pulls your focus. Every notification steals attention. Every social comparison weakens conviction. Protect your energy. That's not selfish. That's strategic. You don't need their permission to disconnect. You don't need approval to say no. You don't need validation to work in silence. You have a choice. Be entertained, or be elite. Be socially busy, or be internally sharp. Isolation sharpens you. This is where identity forms. When no one is watching, who are you? When no one is praising you, do you still execute? When no one is correcting you, do you self-correct? That's the key. Isolation forces honesty. In silence, your excuses get louder. In solitude, your weaknesses become visible. Good. Now you can fix them. It's not about talent. It's about discipline. Schedule solitude. Don't wait for free time. Create it. Block hours where your phone is off. Block mornings where no one has access to you. Block weekends dedicated to skill building. Protect your energy. Reduce unnecessary social exposure. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every debate deserves your voice. Not every trend deserves your attention. Ask yourself, does this build me? If not, decline. Private discipline creates public power. The athlete doesn't skip training because friends are going out. The entrepreneur doesn't pause vision because someone wants attention. The leader doesn't dilute focus to feel included. You have a choice. Comfort now, or confidence later. Noise now, or mastery later. Isolation sharpens you. When you spend time alone refining your craft, something changes. Your standards rise. Your thinking deepens. Your reactions slow down. You become less reactive, less needy, less dependent on applause, and more dangerous. Because now your confidence is internal. It's not built on likes. It's not built on compliments. It's not built on attention. It's built on proof. Private proof. Private discipline creates public power. Protect your energy. Energy is currency. Where you spend it determines who you become. Spend it on distraction, and you become scattered. Spend it on comparison, and you become insecure. Spend it on focused isolation, and you become formidable. You don't need their permission to evolve. You don't need an audience to improve. You need solitude. You need structure. You need standards. Isolation sharpens you. This is not permanent isolation from humanity. It is intentional isolation for growth. Separate to strengthen. Withdraw to rebuild. Silence the world to hear your own command. You mastered discomfort. You learned that results speak. You developed emotional control. Now you understand the final layer. Identity is not discovered in crowds. It is built in isolation. Private discipline creates public power. Protect your energy, because the person you become in private is the person the world will eventually meet in public. And that is the true power you've been building all along. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. Noise is insecurity trying to prove itself. Explanations are weakness asking for validation. Constant updates are ego begging for attention. Silence builds strength. Say it again. Silence builds strength. When you stop reacting, you become unpredictable. When you stop explaining, you become composed. When you stop announcing your moves, you become dangerous. You have a choice. Broadcast your intentions, or build them in private. That's the key. Most people talk too much. They announce goals before achieving them. They defend themselves before being attacked. They explain decisions that require no explanation. And every word drains power. Energy is currency. Every reaction costs you. Every argument taxes you. Every unnecessary explanation withdraws from your account. Energy is currency. If you spend it emotionally, you go bankrupt mentally. Silence builds strength. When someone criticizes you and you don't respond immediately, you win. When someone doubts you and you don't defend yourself, you win. When someone tries to provoke you and you stay steady, you win. Because you preserved energy. Energy is currency. Silence eliminates ego triggers. Ego wants to respond. Ego wants to correct. Ego wants to be understood. Discipline wants results. It's not about pride. It's about discipline. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. You don't need validation to stay focused. You don't need approval to move in silence. You have a choice. React to protect your image, or remain silent to protect your future. That's the key. The unpredictable person controls the game. If people know how you'll react, they can manipulate you. If they know you'll argue, they can provoke you. If they know you'll defend, they can attack. But if you don't react, they hesitate. Silence builds strength. In business, speak less than necessary. In competition, reveal nothing early. In conflict, answer only what is required. Move quietly. Win loudly. Let your results introduce you. Results don't argue. Results don't complain. Results don't explain. They speak. You've already learned that results speak. Now understand this. Silence amplifies them. When you combine silence with execution, you create mystery. When you combine discipline with restraint, you create authority. Energy is currency. Protect it. Stop debating strangers online. Stop explaining your vision to small thinkers. Stop announcing progress before it's real. Every time you overshare, you dilute focus. You have a choice. Attention now, or achievement later. Temporary validation, or permanent respect. Move quietly. Win loudly. Silence is not weakness. It is stored force. Like a drawn bow. Like compressed air. Like calm before impact. Silence builds strength. When you speak less, you observe more. When you observe more, you understand more. When you understand more, you act strategically. That's the key. Strategic action beats emotional reaction every time. Speak less. Do more. Let your habits talk. Let your bank account talk. Let your discipline talk. Identity built through silence is unshakable. Because it is not based on applause. It is based on proof. Private proof. Energy is currency. So audit your spending. Where are you wasting words? Where are you reacting unnecessarily? Where are you explaining things that require no explanation? Cut it. Reduce it. Control it. You don't need to announce your grind. You don't need to defend your standards. You don't need to respond to every opinion. You need to execute. Move quietly. Win loudly. When the results arrive, they will speak for you. And they will speak louder than any argument ever could. You mastered discomfort. You focused on results. You built emotional control. You strengthened yourself in isolation. Now you understand the ultimate layer. Silence is not absence. It is advantage. Silence builds strength. Energy is currency. Move quietly. Win loudly. You have a choice. Be loud and temporary, Or silent and unstoppable. That choice defines everything.